So it was at this point in my medical education that I realized I did not want to be in any specialty that had high mortality rates. I've never in my life watched someone take their last breath, so it affected me in a way that I didn't think it would, to be honest. Hi everyone, welcome to Jenn's Med Life, and I'm back with another video on my surgical rotations. This video will be on my ITU/ICU rotation. So I'm not really sure why they chose ICU as a subspecialty for my surgery rotations, but whatever. I'm glad that I got to experience it. I didn't attend any surgeries this week, but I did get to see a lot of procedures and perform some too. Oh, and don't worry about my hair color. I woke up this morning and decided that I wanted to try purple hair paint wax, so here I am. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start with a fun fact about UK rotations. So in the US, they say ICU, which we all know that stands for Intensive Care Unit. But here in the UK, they say ITU, which stands for Intensive Therapy Unit. And so even though all the signs in the hospital say ITU, my British doctor friend told me that they do use ITU and ICU interchangeably. But honestly, they both sound very similar, especially under a mask. So if you ask somebody where the ICU was or the ITU was, they would understand. So what does an intensivist or critical care physician do? So they are physicians who provide specialist care to critically ill patients by trying to maintain or restore organ function. So what was my week like? So the Monday of that week was an off day for me because we get to celebrate US holidays too, and that holiday was MLK Day. So the only thing that I went to the hospital for was to get fit tested for a mask since I was going to be around COVID patients. For the fit test, they teach you how to don and doff the N95 mask correctly. Then they put a hood over your head and get you to see if you can smell or taste these different sprays, which was disgusting. So the next day, Tuesday, I went into work all excited because I was like, I'm going to see a whole bunch of procedures and a whole bunch of stuff and all of these things, right? But when I walked into the ICU, it was dead. Like cricket dead. And if you follow me on IG, you heard me saying all the things like, oh my gosh, the ICU is boring, blah, 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 blah. So the reason why I thought it was so boring and dead was because there were only 5 patients in there. Like all the other beds were empty. I was so confused, but come to find out that I was in the wrong ITU. So there was a whole nother ITU called ITU 2, and the ITU that I was in, ITU 1, was for non-COVID patients, and ITU 2 was for the COVID patients. So the next day I decided to go to ITU 2, and oh my goodness, it was day and night. There were no empty bed and the place was packed with patients. And about 98, probably 99% of those patients were intubated. It was quite sad. So when I arrived at 8 a.m., I would listen to the handover from the doctors that were there the night before, update the day shift doctors for patient changes and deaths. Then I would do the patient rounds. Then I would observe or assist the proning team with turning the patients, and I will go into more detail in a second. And then for the rest of the day, I would just help out wherever help was needed. So on total, I only got to spend about 4 days in the ICU, but honestly, that was all I needed. Procedures I observed or performed. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my computer list, okay? Yes, so I was able to do some physical exams, which by the way, I felt subcutaneous emphysema for the first time. It felt like pop rocks under your fingers. It's very sad, but it was very cool. I observed the rectus sheath catheter placement. This was placed to help the patient pain after their laparotomy surgery. I saw several central line placements. I observed and assisted with several proning and deproning of patients. So the team of people that helped with this task was different every day because it was a bunch of different doctors and nurses. The COVID ITU needed all hands on deck because it was so busy. So doctors from each department, like peds, OB-GYN, IM, surgery, everybody came to the ICU to help out. So for each patient that they had to prone and deprone, there was this checklist that they had to go through. So if you look down where it says before the procedure, they would ask the team members, have all members of the team introduce themselves, is a consultant and senior nurse aware, any contraindications, are the re-intubation equipment available, are eyes taped and lubricated, etc., etc. And also, if you look at under timeout, this is also before the turning, they would ask if there's a minimum of 5 people, plus 1 person that assisted with the chest drains. They would also ask if all team members are aware of their role and if the appropriate ventilator settings were there, if there was cardiovascular stability, etc., etc. So after they went through those 2 checklists, they would then turn the patients. And even the turning was very procedural. There was definitely a flow with it. Then after they turn the patients, they would then again go through the checklist where it says sign out. And so they'll see if the endotracheal tube length at the teeth was at the same length as it was before they moved the patient. They will also ask if the ventilator settings were reviewed, if the lines were secured, etc., etc. So yeah, it was actually teamwork that was needed for turning the patients. I also did an ABG collection from an arterial line. I took blood culture from an arterial line. I assisted with some endotracheal tube tie changes. I assisted with some patient positioning. I observed the DRE for an impaction, which stands for digital rectal exam. So the nurse did this DRE to see why the patient wasn't moving their bowels. And as she started describing to the other nurse she had a finger in her anus, and she was describing to the other nurse what the stool felt like. And the other nurse was like, okay, that's too much information. And in my mind, I was thinking, what do you mean that's too much information?
That's true.
Oh, but quick side note, I was terrified when I could smell her poop. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if I can smell her poop, I'm smelling COVID too. So I quickly asked the doctor, I was like, look, I can smell her poop. Is this normal? I mean, am I supposed to not smell anything? And he was like, no, calm down. It's okay. You're fine. Like, it's normal to smell something. So I observed an echocardiogram, an NG tube placement, intravenous cannulations. I did some ABG interpretations. I assisted with some ADLs, so activities of daily living, which basically means, getting the patient clean, dressed, positioned, etc. And I also worked on some discharge paperwork. So my first patient death experience. On day 2 of being in COVID ICU, I lost my first patient. So this is what happened. I was busy with another patient when his monitor started to beep and go off. I turned around to look at what was going on, and his stats were dropping. His BP dropped down to 20/20, and his heart rate was at 30. At this point, I'm tearing up because yesterday they had to tell his family that they were withdrawing all care because nothing was working for him. They knew he was dying. Then moments later, his BP dropped from 20/20 to 17/17, and then his heart rate was 0. At this point, I'm full blown silent crying. Okay. The doctor went over to the patient, felt for his pulse, nothing. Called time of death. As she's walking back around, she turns around and she sees me with red eyes and tears falling down my face or my mask. And she starts to console me and ask me if I wanted to take a break or if I wanted to seek well-being support. I was like, no, I'm okay. I just need a second. So I went to the bathroom and I just let it all out. I just had to let everything out, all the tears, all the sadness, everything. I mean, I was hurt. I was so hurt. I mean, I didn't even know this man. I met him yesterday and he was unconscious. So I didn't even talk to this man, but I was just so distraught and so hurt because he was young. He was a young, healthy, fit man before he came into the hospital with COVID. And all I could think about was his family. And I think that's really what made me so upset. The day before he died, I remember laying my hand on him and just saying a prayer for him and his family. I mean, not even for him to survive because at this point he was dying, but for him to die with peace and so that his family would be okay without him. So it was at this point in my medical education that I realized I did not want to be in any specialty that had a high mortality rates. I've never in my life watched someone take their last breath. So it affected me in a way that I didn't think it would, to be honest. Now, obviously death isn't inevitable, but in some specialties like ICU, it's just way more than other specialties. Quick side note, I hate COVID. I'm tired of COVID. I'm tired of it destroying lives, destroying families. Just want it to be over. So can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? Well, that answer is obvious. It's an obvious no. It's way too depressing for me. I don't think my heart can take it. It's just death. It's so sad. And I understand that we're in a pandemic right now, so there are just way more deaths than usual in the ICU. But the ICU is naturally, it's for sick people. It's for the sickest of the sick. So naturally, there are going to be more deaths than other specialties. Besides, I don't think I ever want to get used to death and dying. When that man died, everybody else was just I mean, I'm sure they were sad inside somewhere, but they were just going about their day like it was nothing, and I'm just over here crying, like ugly crying, like. But with that being said, I do very much respect intensivists like a lot. Their work is very important and they do save a lot of lives. So that was my 1 week ICU/ITU rotation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at JennMedArt, and stay tuned for my next video, which will be on my plastic surgery rotation. All right, I'll see you guys then. Bye.